Shape. The element that I honestly think never gets the credit that it deserves. You think you know all your shapes, huh? Know your rectangles and your circles and you're all set to go without them? I get people all the time who just want to skip the whole build from shapes step before they actually learn how to properly do it. I'm just sitting here like, no. Please, learn your shapes. Well, I just want to learn how to draw faster. And that's why it's important to learn the shapes first before you get to that step, yeah? You skip too many steps on your staircase and you'll pull a muscle, trip over your feet, and realize you could be in better shape. Sorry. Let's continue. Our friend Google states that shape is a flat area surrounded by edges or an outline. Artists use all kinds of shapes. Geometric shapes are precise and regular, like squares, rectangles, and triangles. They are often found in human-made things, like buildings and machines, while biomorphic shapes are found more in nature. Biomorphic. I have never heard anyone use that word before, but it sounds kind of funky and futuristic, so I'll keep using it. Why not? In slightly simpler terms, shapes can be broken up into two categories, geometric shapes and biomorphic shapes, which are more commonly called organic shapes. The main thing to remember, though, is that shapes are two-dimensional, or 2D, meaning that they're flat. Forms are three-dimensional, or 3D, which is an entirely different element of art, but we'll get into those another day. Let's focus on shape for now. Geometric shapes are the shapes you're probably more familiar with, since you're probably bombarded with them in math class as well. Geometric shapes are considered regular, or more calculated and precise. Squares, rectangles, circles, triangles, and so on are all considered geometric. Geometric shapes are usually used to build up and illustrate more man-made objects, such as buildings and technology, since they're easier to remake over and over. An example of geometric work in historical art is Castle and Sun by Paul Klee, for various obvious reasons. Being part of the Expressionist movement, the vast majority of Paul Klee's work was along the same lines as this. Made up of squares and circles and other geometric shapes, Klee's artworks are usually pretty similar to those wooden building blocks you got as a little kid. Actually, I got plastic squishy building blocks that smelled strangely like vanilla, but that's besides the point. Moving on. Organic shapes, or biomorphic shapes if you want something fancier, are the shapes that don't really have names and that are less precise and irregular. Can you have them in math class? Yes, but they were always irritating to calculate and I'm not going to get into it. While geometric shapes stick with more man-made objects, organic shapes make up everything else, whether they're people or animals or anything else that can't be 100% named with a simple geometric shape. Just because they're organic also doesn't mean that they're only curved or soft. They can still include more rigid lines. However, organic shapes are really only seen once we add the details on top of our geometric shapes. Confusing? Don't worry. I got examples. An extremely literal example of geometric shapes building up organic figures is the entire Cubism movement, which is more of an abstract movement that messed around with shapes to build up organic things. We spoke about him in our previous video about color, but he makes a perfect example for this element as well. Pablo Picasso is a most well-renowned figure in the Cubism movement, and it's what he was known the best for. Let's take a look at this piece, Porte de Nuit et Royale, painted in 1937. While you can clearly see it's made up of varying geometric shapes, such as a load of triangles and some rectangles, all in all you can still tell it's depicting an individual. Albeit it does look like she's looking into a broken mirror, building up people using geometric shapes is a very, very common practice with artists, and it's encouraged by many to be a good starting point when it comes to beginning to draw human and animal figures. Another slightly more literal depiction of geometric shapes building up organic shapes is the process of a lot of character designers and creature designers. Especially when it comes to building silhouettes, shapes are incredibly important. Silhouettes can be considered something akin to shadows, where you see the character or creature without any details at all, almost like you're looking at their shadow on a wall, or from behind a curtain with a light pointed behind them. Illusion artists will tend to use these silhouettes and utilize positive and negative space to create said illusions, making two different objects or scenes. In fact, let's take a look at one of those. There's a woman's face here, but can you see the other image as well? Feel free to pause and think about it. As well as the woman's face in the negative space, the positive space makes a man playing a saxophone. Space is another element of art all on its own, but positive space is considered the main figures or objects in an illustration, while the negative space is the background. On another hand, character designers try to make interesting silhouettes for characters and creatures by using a method called shape language, which is how we communicate meaning or evoke emotions using only shapes and no words. For instance, sharper, thinner lines tend to express that something is more evil or sly, while rounder and wider shapes tend to be more friendly and approachable figures. Compare some of the characters to come from Disney's Aladdin. Jafar is mainly built up of sharp angles, most notably triangles and thin rectangles, whereas Genie is built up of ovals and wide rectangles. Heftier rectangles and squares tend to show that a character is both strong and trustworthy, whereas thin triangles and hard edges make a character seem evil and unapproachable. For a less in-your-face example of geometric shapes building up organic shapes, let's use a page from another manga I love, Full Metal Alchemist by Hiromu Arakawa. Please read this manga if you haven't. The author is hilarious, and she puts in little diary entries at the ends of some some of her chapters about her experiences as a manga artist. I also finished this whole manga in 2 days, and I was in shambles. The main thing I wanted to point out was her art style. While the finished product is all majorly organic, her style itself is actually quite geometric. If you don't have a trained eye, it can be very hard to see, so let's take a closer look. It's a very common technique with a lot of artists to build up all the objects and things within a scene using both shapes and forms. The super basic shapes within the body tend to be circles and quadrilaterals, such as squares, rhombuses, and rectangles. Using these shapes is what you should start off with when building up people. Let's take a look now at how I build up people normally after using shapes for ages. Don't quite look the same as all the rudimentary shapes, right? Even though it doesn't look like them now, I started off by using those super rudimentary shapes, and then grew into something more stylized. Practice with the geometric shapes that make up your organic shapes first before you dive straight in. All organic shapes can be broken down into geometric shapes combined together, then modified with a sprinkle of details. Start with basic geometric shapes first if you're not familiar with what you're illustrating, and then get into the more advanced stuff once you get used to illustrating them. Shapes are a relatively simpler concept to get the hang of, but that doesn't make them any less important. I'd argue that it's probably one of the most important ones to understand in order to start off a drawing, alongside forms. Learning this element of art is key to having a good base to start off any work of art. For your next piece, think of ways you can employ shape. Look around you. What shapes are making up your shirt? What about your lunchroom today? Challenge yourself with different objects around you and identify the shapes you need to use to build up their forms before you move on to the final product. If you're a teacher, we have worksheets on the topic which you can find on our website, along with other art resources for your classroom, link down below. If you liked what you saw, make sure to leave a like on this video, comment down below to tell me what you'd like to see me draw next, and hit subscribe so that you never miss an upload. Join our little art community with the links down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye!
Portrait de Nocheluard.
What?
Portrait de Nocheluard.
Portrait
de Nocheluard.
I'm just gonna say Portrait de Nocheluard.